In the vast reaches of the galaxy, countless worlds existed, each with its own lifeforms, cultures, and histories. Some civilizations were ancient, spanning thousands of years, and their knowledge of the universe was deep and intricate. Others were young, still learning the ways of the stars, fragile and inexperienced, yet filled with hope and dreams of greatness. Among these countless planets, one stood out not for its size or technological advancements, but for the simplicity of its life and the vulnerability of its people. It was a peaceful world, bathed in golden sunlight, and surrounded by blue oceans that shimmered under its twin suns. Its inhabitants had lived for generations in harmony, building cities of wonder that blended seamlessly with nature. They had mastered agriculture, architecture, and even basic space travel, but their technology, though impressive for their level, was no match for the predators and marauders that roamed the galaxy, hunting weaker civilizations for conquest and resources. These peaceful beings had always believed that cooperation and wisdom were the keys to survival. They had formed alliances with nearby planets, establishing trade routes and treaties, and maintained a small defensive fleet to guard against occasional raids. Still, despite all their preparation, they were constantly aware of their limitations. Their weapons, while advanced, could not stand against the sheer ferocity of the marauders, who were faster, stronger, and far more experienced in interstellar combat. These marauders were not just thieves or opportunists. They were creatures bred for destruction, with bodies designed to endure extreme environments and minds honed for tactical dominance. Whenever these marauders appeared, entire cities could be wiped out in a matter of hours, and even the strongest defenders were often forced to retreat, leaving the population vulnerable and terrified. As the years passed, the inhabitants of this planet grew increasingly anxious. Every attack left scars that were both physical and emotional. Families mourned their lost loved ones, and communities struggled to rebuild under the constant shadow of fear. It was during one particularly harsh raid, when marauders struck with unprecedented precision, that the planet's leaders realized something crucial. They could no longer rely on their own strength alone. Their defenses, while brave and resourceful, were insufficient. The reality was clear: without help, their civilization might not survive the next onslaught. The weight of this realization pressed heavily on the leaders, who had always believed that survival depended on knowledge, diplomacy, and careful planning. Now, they faced a truth they had never wanted to admit. They were too small, too weak, too vulnerable to defend themselves against the merciless forces of the galaxy. In desperation, the leaders convened an emergency council, gathering not only military commanders but also scientists, scholars, and spiritual leaders. They debated endlessly, discussing every possible solution. Some suggested negotiating with the marauders, offering tribute or technology in exchange for peace. Others argued for evacuation, relocating their people to safer worlds, or even abandoning the planet entirely. Every option seemed inadequate. Negotiation could only delay the inevitable. As the marauders were notorious for breaking promises, evacuation would mean leaving behind everything they had built: their homes, their history, their culture, and there was no guarantee that they would find safety elsewhere. As the council grew weary, a quiet voice began to be heard among the debates, a voice that spoke not of fear, but of hope. It was the voice of their spiritual elders, those who had always guided the civilization with wisdom and vision. They reminded everyone that the galaxy was vast and full of possibilities, that somewhere, among the countless stars and worlds, there might exist beings strong enough, courageous enough, and wise enough to help. They suggested sending a message into the depths of space, a plea for assistance to any species capable of answering it. This idea was revolutionary for them. They had always believed in self-reliance, in solving problems through their own ingenuity and cooperation. To ask for help was almost unthinkable, a step that could be seen as weakness. But desperation had stripped away pride. The council agreed, and the process of creating the plea began immediately. Scientists worked to construct a transmission that could travel light years, capable of crossing the vast emptiness of space without being lost or distorted. Linguists and scholars encoded their message in a form that could be understood by alien civilizations, using mathematics, universal constants, and visual representations of their plight. They carefully articulated their story, who they were, the dangers they faced, and the urgent need for assistance. They emphasized that they did not seek to dominate, conquer, or control, only to survive, to protect their people, and to restore peace to their world. They called out not just for soldiers or weapons, but for heroes who could understand the value of life, courage, and justice. When the transmission was complete, it was unlike any message the galaxy had received before. It was more than a call for help. It was a prayer, a plea for hope in the face of overwhelming fear. It spoke of lives at stake, families in danger, and a civilization on the brink of destruction. It was a message filled with emotion, yet carefully reasoned, showing intelligence, humility, and desperation all at once. They released it into the void, sending it outward on waves of energy that would travel for decades, maybe centuries, before reaching a receptive ear. And then, they waited. The inhabitants of the planet had little expectation that anyone would answer, knowing that the universe was vast and filled with indifference. Yet hope, even fragile, had a way of inspiring courage. For the first time in many cycles, The people allowed themselves to imagine the possibility that help might come, that someone might hear their prayers and intervene, and that their civilization might survive the darkness that loomed over them far across the galaxy. On Earth, the message eventually arrived. Humanity was not a species that was widely known among the stars at that time. Many civilizations considered humans primitive, unpredictable, and largely insignificant. They had seen Earth as a small, somewhat chaotic world, full of life but not yet capable of influencing galactic affairs in meaningful ways. Yet, the humans who received the message were different. These were not politicians or scholars or negotiators. They were individuals accustomed to extreme challenges. People who had been forged in environments harsher than the alien worlds that sent out the plea. Humanity itself had evolved in conditions that were brutal and unforgiving. They had learned to survive in deserts where water was scarce, in mountains where the cold could kill in moments, and in jungles where predators and disease were constant threats. Every human carried a piece of this resilience, a will to survive that had been honed over thousands of years of adapting to their harsh homeworld, and this was exactly the kind of strength that the galaxy had. Underestimated among the humans who first encountered the plea were the Deathworlders, a specialized group trained to handle the most dangerous and unpredictable situations imaginable. They were called Deathworlders because of their origin, Earth's most extreme environments, where most humans would perish. They thrived. Where others saw danger, they saw opportunity. They were not concerned with diplomacy or politics. Their purpose was survival and action, and they approached every challenge with a combination of intelligence, instinct, and fearlessness that few could match. They were capable of improvising weapons from whatever materials were at hand, navigating hostile terrain effortlessly, and facing creatures far larger, stronger, or more vicious than themselves without hesitation. For the galaxy, they were an anomaly, a species underestimated at every turn, yet capable of feats that could change the balance of power across planets. When the Deathworlders studied the plea, they did not see a simple request for help. They saw a call to action, a situation where their unique skills could make the difference between life and death for an entire civilization. Unlike many alien species who might have hesitated, debated, or attempted diplomacy first, the Deathworlders understood instinctively that in some situations only decisive action could save lives. They began preparing for deployment immediately, analyzing the alien planet's environment, studying its known threats, and planning strategies that would exploit their strengths. Every move was calculated with precision, but also with the flexibility to adapt to unexpected challenges. This was the human way: plan thoroughly, but never be bound by the plan when reality demanded innovation. Meanwhile, back on the peaceful planet, anticipation mixed with anxiety as time passed. The inhabitants had no way of knowing who or what would answer their plea. Some imagined calm, composed heroes, beings who would negotiate, protect, and restore order with minimal disruption. Others feared that even if help came, it might bring new dangers, that the saviors might be as unpredictable as the marauders they hoped to repel. They watched the skies constantly, scanning for signs of approaching ships, listening for signals that might indicate a response. Every shadow, every anomaly in the heavens, stirred both hope and fear. And yet, despite the uncertainty, a sense of cautious optimism began to take hold. They had taken the step that mattered most. They had asked for help, and in doing so, had opened the door to possibilities they could never have imagined alone. What the aliens did not know, and what they could not imagine, was the kind of force that was on its way. The Deathworlders were not gentle heroes. They were not diplomats or negotiators. They were humans shaped by adversity, tested by extremes, and capable of turning environments that would destroy others into advantages for themselves. They were fearless, relentless, and adaptable. They did not merely respond to danger. They became it, a storm of calculated fury and skill that few in the galaxy could comprehend until they experienced it firsthand. For the peaceful inhabitants who had sent the plea, this was a twist of fate they could not have predicted. They had prayed for heroes, expecting beings of wisdom and courage. What they would receive would redefine their understanding of both heroism and power. Earth's Deathworlders were coming, and with them came a force that would alter not only the fate of their planet, but the perception of humanity across the stars. As the first signals of Earth's response began to approach, excitement and fear intertwined in the hearts of the alien population. The next chapter of their civilization was about to begin, and they had no idea how profound, how intense, and how unpredictable it would be. Their prayers had been answered not with calm, cautious saviors, but with humans from a world that had been shaped by death itself. Warriors whose very presence would challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about survival, courage, and heroism. The stage was set. The galaxy, the alien planet, and humanity were all on the verge of a collision of fate, where old expectations would shatter, and new legends would be born. The peaceful inhabitants could only wait and hope that the humans who were coming would be the salvation they needed, even if the full scale of what Earth's Deathworlders meant had yet to be realized. Their story, the story of hope, desperation, and the arrival of an unprecedented force, was only just beginning, and the universe itself would soon take notice. When the humans first approached the distant planet, the peaceful inhabitants watched in awe and confusion. From the skies above, massive ships descended, not sleek, gleaming vessels designed for diplomacy or luxury, but functional, rugged, and intimidating crafts built to survive the harshest conditions imaginable. Unlike anything the aliens had seen before, these ships carried an aura of raw power. There was no pomp, no ceremonial displays, only the unmistakable presence of beings who thrived in danger and chaos. The aliens, accustomed to orderly and polite interventions from other advanced species, were taken aback. They had imagined heroes who would carefully land, extend polite greetings, and offer measured assistance. Instead, what they saw were humans moving with sharp precision, surveying the environment, scanning for threats, and preparing for actions that seemed almost violent in their decisiveness. The peaceful citizens could not help but feel a strange combination of hope and fear. Hope, because they knew these humans were strong and determined, and fear because they had no idea how far the humans would go to protect them. The Deathworlders themselves wasted no time in assessing the planet and its dangers. Their eyes were trained to notice everything: structural weaknesses in buildings, hidden natural hazards, potential ambush points. To the humans, every detail mattered, for the slightest oversight could mean disaster. They moved through the alien cities silently, efficiently, observing and learning at a pace far faster than the locals could comprehend. To the aliens, it seemed as if these humans were not just here to help, they were here to dominate, to take control, to remake everything according to their own understanding of strength and survival. But that was a misunderstanding. The humans did not seek to dominate the planet or its people. They sought only to protect, to neutralize threats before they could harm the inhabitants. Their methods, however, were so unlike anything the aliens had ever encountered that initial encounters were marked by tension. Children hid, elders watched anxiously, and council members whispered worries among themselves. What manner of saviors were these? Were they friends, or something far more dangerous? The first true challenge arose almost immediately. Marauders, sensing the arrival of new, unknown forces, began testing the humans. They sent reconnaissance scouts, creatures of terrifying size and strength, to probe defenses and gauge reactions. The aliens panicked. Their fleets were small and underprepared, their soldiers untrained for encounters with such lethal predators. But the humans reacted with a calm efficiency that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. Using a combination of instinct, observation, and adaptability, they neutralized the scouts without unnecessary destruction, striking with precision that minimized collateral damage. That aliens could not believe what they were seeing. Where they expected negotiation, the humans acted decisively. Where they expected fear, the humans displayed fearlessness. Slowly, the aliens began to understand that these were not ordinary helpers, they were predators of the highest order, but for the right cause. They were trained to survive, to eliminate threats, and to adapt to conditions that would overwhelm almost any other species. The planet's leaders, observing the humans' efficiency, struggled to reconcile their initial fears with the undeniable results. On one hand, the humans' approach was harsh and intimidating. On the other, they were undeniably effective. The aliens realized that if the humans were willing to act so decisively against small threats, they could handle the larger, more dangerous marauders that had plagued their world for generations. Yet, the challenge was more than just understanding human methods. It was learning to trust them in the face of alien expectations. Many alien scholars worried that the humans might take unnecessary risks, endangering civilians, or that their methods might cause irreparable damage to the planet's delicate ecosystems. The humans, however, had a different calculus. They understood that risk was unavoidable in any mission, but that intelligent action and rapid adaptation could mitigate danger. For them, the stakes were simple: protect life at all costs, and eliminate threats before they could escalate. The aliens were witnessing a new definition of heroism, one that challenged every preconceived notion they had ever held. The first true test came when the humans ventured into a dense forest region near the planet's northern hemisphere. This forest had long been considered a no-go zone by the alien inhabitants because marauders often used it as a staging ground for attacks. The trees were enormous, their trunks thicker than entire alien buildings, and their canopies blocked sunlight, creating a permanent twilight on the forest floor. Hidden predators, both local and imported by marauders, lurked among the shadows. To most species, entering this forest without preparation would have been suicidal. But the humans approached it with methodical precision. They mapped the terrain as they moved, using advanced sensors and a keen understanding of natural behavior patterns. They laid traps to catch or deter threats, but in ways that minimized unnecessary harm. They worked in teams, each individual covering another, communicating silently through gestures and prearranged signals. Every movement was deliberate, calculated, and incredibly efficient. The aliens who accompanied them could hardly keep up. Their fear of the forest, their instinct to avoid the unknown, contrasted sharply with the humans' fearlessness. When a massive predator, something the size of 3 alien tanks combined, emerged from the shadows, the humans reacted instantly. Using a combination of improvised weapons and coordinated maneuvers, They neutralized the creature without hesitation. The aliens were frozen with disbelief. How could beings so small in appearance, compared to the predator, move with such speed, intelligence, and coordination? It was like watching a storm unfold, unpredictable, powerful, and unstoppable. For the first time, the aliens truly realized that the human strength did not come from numbers, technology, or raw power alone. It came from adaptability, courage, and the ability to turn any environment, no matter how hostile, into an advantage. As the humans advanced further into the planet's territory, they encountered more challenges. Natural hazards such as unstable cliffs, fast-flowing rivers, and sudden storms tested their skills to the limit. Marauders had deliberately manipulated the terrain in some areas, creating traps and pitfalls designed to delay and confuse invaders. Yet the humans adapted seamlessly, using their knowledge of physics, biology, and instinctive survival skills to navigate the dangers. They moved like shadows through the environment, blending observation with action. And in doing so, they began to change the perception of the alien population. No longer did the aliens see danger as insurmountable. No longer did they assume that survival depended solely on defensive measures or retreat. The humans showed them that courage, intelligence, and relentless determination could overcome even the most formidable obstacles. However, the rising challenges were not just physical, they were also psychological. The aliens had grown accustomed to fear, to the expectation of loss and defeat. They had long resigned themselves to the idea that marauders were unstoppable, that no help could truly save them. The humans, by contrast, exuded confidence and focus that bordered on audacity. They did not flinch in the face of danger. They did not hesitate or second-guess. This was unsettling for the aliens. They were witnessing a new model of heroism, one in which fear was acknowledged but never allowed to control action. The presence of the humans began to inspire hope, but it also forced the alien population to confront their own limitations. Some began to question whether their past strategies, their careful planning, and their reliance on diplomacy had truly been enough to ensure survival. The humans, unintentionally, were teaching them a new way to face challenges, a way that combined courage, action, and adaptability in a manner the aliens had never considered. As the humans continued their mission, small victories accumulated into a growing sense of momentum. Marauder scouts were defeated, traps were neutralized, and the alien citizens began to see that survival was possible. The humans' methods were unusual but effective. Their speed and decisiveness a stark contrast to the aliens' cautious approach. The Deathworlders were not here to negotiate. They were here to act, and they acted with a level of skill and efficiency that no one had anticipated. Every move, every decision, reinforced the idea that they were unlike any heroes the galaxy had seen before. For the aliens, the reality of the situation began to sink in. Their prayers had not been answered with gentle, cautious champions. They had been answered with humans shaped by Earth's harshest conditions, a species that turned danger into opportunity and refused to surrender to fear. Yet the rising challenge was far from over. The humans' arrival had already drawn attention from the marauders. Word of new, highly capable beings on the planet reached the enemy forces, and they began preparing for a more aggressive assault. The aliens sensed the danger approaching but were still unsure how the humans would respond. Would they negotiate, or treat, or meet the threat head? The Deathworlders, however, were already anticipating the next phase of conflict. They trained relentlessly, analyzing every known tactic of the marauders, considering the environmental advantages, and preparing for rapid adaptation. Every challenge they faced only sharpened their abilities. Obstacles that would paralyze other species became opportunities for them to innovate, improvise, and dominate. Their focus was absolute, their resolve unshakable, and their determination to protect the alien civilization unyielding for the inhabitants of the planet. The rising challenge was as much about belief as it was about survival. Watching the humans act, they began to understand that heroism was not measured by gentleness, diplomacy, or even strength alone. Heroism could also be measured by the ability to confront danger without hesitation, to adapt without fear, and to persist when all seemed lost. The humans' presence was both terrifying and inspiring. It challenged every expectation, every assumption, and every limitation the aliens had placed on themselves. In a way, the humans were already transforming the planet before the full-scale conflict even began. They were teaching resilience, courage, and the power of decisive action. Lessons that the aliens would need to embrace if they were to survive what was coming next. The humans had shown themselves to be fearless, efficient, and adaptable, turning initial fear into cautious respect. The aliens, once skeptical and anxious, were beginning to understand that they had received not just help but a force capable of redefining survival itself. The rising challenge had revealed both the limits of the alien civilization and the extraordinary capabilities of Earth's death. What lay ahead would test every skill, every instinct, and every ounce of courage. But if the humans could meet the rising challenges of this stage, they were already proving that no threat, no matter how great, would be beyond their ability to confront and overcome. The day came when the aliens realized that the danger they had long feared was no longer a distant threat. It was upon them in full force. The marauders, alerted by the arrival of Earth's humans, had gathered in greater numbers than ever before. They came like a storm from the void, massive fleets of ships bristling with weaponry, creatures of terrible size and strength filling the skies, and ground forces ready to devastate everything in their path. For the peaceful inhabitants of the planet, the situation was horrifying. Panic swept through the cities, families clutched each other tightly, children cried, and even the bravest soldiers felt the weight of impending doom pressing down on them. The marauders had fought on countless worlds before, leaving trails of destruction wherever they went. Most civilizations had no hope when faced with them. Yet, despite the terror surrounding them, the humans Earth's Deathworlders remained calm, almost eerily so. To the aliens, it seemed impossible that any being could face such overwhelming danger without fear. Yet here were the humans, moving as if the storm around them was nothing more than a gentle breeze. The initial strike of the marauders came suddenly, almost without warning. Massive ships dropped from the upper atmosphere, their engines glowing like molten metal, while ground forces landed in strategic positions, tearing through the forests and plains where defenses had been hastily set up. Alien soldiers attempted to respond, but they were unprepared for the scale and intensity of the assault. Many were cut down almost immediately. Entire communication networks were disrupted. Chaos reigned. Civilians scrambled for safety, some fleeing to shelters that were quickly overwhelmed. The planet seemed on the brink of collapse, and then the humans moved. Unlike the aliens, who were still reacting to the attack, the Deathworlders had anticipated every move. They had studied the marauders' patterns, predicted their likely strategies, and positioned themselves in ways that maximized their strengths. With calm efficiency, they began to turn the tide. In one area, a massive marauder beast larger than any building charged toward a group of civilians trapped in a plaza. Alien soldiers froze, unsure how to respond. The humans acted instantly. Some diverted the beast with precise distractions, while others used improvised weapons, energy devices, and traps to halt its advance. Every human moved with a clarity of purpose that seemed impossible under such pressure. They anticipated the creature's movements, countered its attacks, and protected the civilians without hesitation. To the alien onlookers, it appeared as though the humans were operating with some supernatural awareness, seeing everything before it happened. It was terrifying, but it worked. The civilians were safe, and the marauder was neutralized with minimal destruction. Word spread quickly through the streets. The humans were unstoppable. The Deathworlders' effectiveness extended beyond sheer combat ability. They understood the terrain in ways the marauders did not anticipate. The forests, mountains, and rivers that the marauders assumed would be obstacles for the defenders became tools for the humans. They set ambushes along narrow passes, using natural traps to slow the enemy. They caused landslides, redirected rivers, and manipulated the environment in subtle ways that made the marauders vulnerable. Every strike, every movement, was designed to maximize advantage while minimizing risk to civilians. The aliens watched in awe and disbelief. What they had assumed was chaos was actually a highly orchestrated operation. Humans who appeared small and fragile were reshaping the battlefield itself. The escalation reached a critical moment when the marauders concentrated their forces on the planet's capital. Their aim was clear: destroy the heart of the civilization, break the will of the inhabitants, and establish control through fear and intimidation. Ships hovered in the skies above, their weapons charging, while enormous creatures roamed the streets below, tearing through buildings and defensive fortifications. The alien leaders convened in the capital's council chamber. Feeling the full weight of the marauders' power pressing down on them, many whispered that all hope was lost, that their civilization would finally fall. Yet outside the council walls, the humans were already moving into position, preparing for the most critical confrontation of the battle. They did not panic. They did not hesitate. They had trained for situations like this, and they had done so in conditions far harsher than anything this alien world could offer. As the humans prepared, civilians were evacuated, soldiers were directed into strategic positions, and the marauders moved closer, expecting easy victory. Then the first wave of human counterattacks began. Small, coordinated teams appeared where the marauders least expected, striking swiftly and decisively. Marauder ships were disabled or destroyed before they could unleash full firepower. Ground creatures were lured into traps, neutralized with speed and precision. Every action was executed with deadly efficiency. The aliens who watched were both amazed and horrified. These humans were not only fighting, they were orchestrating an entire defense with the skill and precision of a force many times their size. The marauders, for the first time, were facing resistance they had not anticipated. Their confidence faltered. The battle grew more intense as the humans pushed forward. Marauder commanders attempted to regroup, but the Deathworlders were already predicting their strategies, countering them with unparalleled adaptability. Every time a new threat emerged, the humans reacted instantly, improvising weapons, setting traps and exploiting weaknesses in the enemy's approach. The aliens began to understand something critical. These humans were not ordinary soldiers. They were survivors in their purest form. Their minds worked faster, their reflexes sharper, and their courage deeper than anything the Marauders had ever encountered. No amount of superior technology or raw strength could match the humans' combination of intelligence, creativity, and relentless determination. At the height of the battle, a colossal marauder beast larger than any previous enemy appeared in the central square of the capital. Its roar shook buildings and terrified civilians. Alien forces hesitated, unable to mount a proper response. The humans did not hesitate. Teams of Deathworlders approached from multiple directions, using a combination of energy weapons, mechanical, traps, and the environment itself to immobilize and eliminate the creature. They moved with perfect coordination, communicating silently, adapting instantly to every unexpected action by the beast. The aliens were stunned. They had never seen a force capable of such speed, precision, and effectiveness. Within moments, the creature lay defeated, and the path toward the Marauders' command center was open. But the humans' greatest challenge was not just the creatures they faced, the Marauder leaders themselves. Highly intelligent, ruthless, and experienced in war, these leaders had fought on countless worlds and considered themselves unbeatable. They had underestimated the Deathworlders. The humans analyzed every move, every strategy, and countered with skill and creativity that forced the Marauder leaders to reconsider their assumptions. Where the Marauders relied on brute force, the humans used intelligence and adaptability. Where the Marauders expected fear, the humans displayed fearlessness. Slowly, the tide of battle turned. The aliens began to participate more actively, inspired by the humans' example. Soldiers who had once frozen in terror now fought with renewed courage. Civilians found the strength to defend their homes in whatever ways they could. The human presence had not only countered the Marauders, it had awakened resilience within the alien population. The critical moment came when the Marauders launched a coordinated strike against the central energy hub, intending to cripple the city's power and communications. Failure at this point would have been catastrophic. The humans acted immediately. Some teams infiltrated the enemy lines to disrupt the attack, while others set up defensive positions that allowed the alien civilians to remain safe. Every maneuver was calculated for maximum efficiency, exploiting every environmental advantage and every weakness in the Marauders' plan. The aliens could barely keep up, but they followed instructions, guided by the humans' expertise. In an astonishing display of coordination and courage, the Deathworlders prevented the destruction of the energy hub, neutralizing the Marauders' strike and turning the enemy's momentum against them. As the battle raged on, the aliens realized the true magnitude of what they were witnessing. These humans did not merely fight, they reshaped reality around them. The Marauders' confidence, built on years of conquering other civilizations, faltered in the face of this extraordinary force. Every maneuver the Deathworlders executed seemed perfectly timed, perfectly calculated, yet adaptable to the chaos of the battlefield. Civilians watched from shelters, unable to comprehend the full scope of the human effectiveness, but slowly understanding that survival was possible. The humans' actions were changing not only the outcome of the battle, but also the aliens' perception of heroism and power. The critical moment had passed, but its impact would resonate forever. The Deathworlders had confronted the full might of the Marauders and emerged victorious in the first decisive engagements. They had protected the innocent, neutralized the enemy, and turned despair into hope. For the aliens, the lesson was clear. Their prayers had been answered, but not in the way they expected. These were not gentle, measured heroes. They were humans from a world that had been shaped by adversity, creatures capable of facing overwhelming danger without hesitation, and whose very presence would redefine what it meant to survive. The planet had endured its first test, and though the battle was not yet over, the Deathworlders had proven themselves as a force unlike any the galaxy had ever known. After the critical battle, the planet's atmosphere began to change. The smoke from destroyed Marauder ships still hung in the skies, and the sound of distant fires crackled across the cities. Civilians cautiously stepped out of their shelters, eyes wide, hearts pounding, unsure if the nightmare was truly over. For generations, they had believed the Marauders unbeatable, that no help could truly save them from destruction. Now, standing among the ruins and the scars of battle, they began to understand a truth that had seemed impossible until this moment. The humans, Earth's Deathworlders, had given them a chance at survival. The resolution of the conflict did not come suddenly. It was not a single strike or a single decisive move that ended the Marauder threat. It was a combination of intelligence, adaptability, and relentless action over days, even weeks, that gradually wore down the invaders. The humans, working in small, highly coordinated teams, systematically dismantled the Marauders' operations. Communication hubs were taken out, supply lines were disrupted, and ambushes were carefully executed to neutralize enemy forces without causing unnecessary destruction. Every maneuver was designed with precision. Nothing was wasted and nothing was left to chance. To the alien observers, it was astonishing. They had fought for centuries against Marauders, using all their knowledge and technology, and yet they had never seen an approach like this. That humans did not just fight, they strategized in real time, adapting to changes faster than the Marauders could respond. turning the environment itself into a weapon against the invaders. The Deathworlders understood that simply defeating the Marauders on one front would not be enough. The Marauders were cunning, ruthless, and capable of regrouping quickly. The humans needed to eliminate both the present threat and the potential for future attacks. They began targeting the leaders of the Marauder forces, the strategists who coordinated attacks and controlled other Marauders. These leaders were not just strong, they were intelligent, experienced in interstellar warfare, and accustomed to being feared by entire civilizations. Yet the humans approached them with the same calculated efficiency they had used throughout the conflict. They studied the Marauder leaders' patterns, anticipated their moves, and executed operations that neutralized their influence. One by one, the leaders fell, not through brute force alone, but through a combination of intellect, speed, and adaptability that the Marauders had never seen before. As the enemy leadership collapsed, the morale of the Marauder forces faltered. Without guidance and coordination, their massive numbers became a liability. Confused and unorganized, the remaining forces were quickly overwhelmed by the humans' precise, strategic attacks. The Deathworlders did not indiscriminately slaughter the Marauders. They focused on efficiency, using minimum force to achieve maximum results. This was not out of mercy, but out of understanding. Every unnecessary action wasted time, energy, and resources. Their goal was complete neutralization, not chaos for chaos's sake. By prioritizing effectiveness and minimizing collateral damage, the humans ensured that the alien civilians could begin to reclaim their cities and rebuild without fear of ongoing devastation. Meanwhile, the aliens themselves had begun to change during the course of the battle. Initially paralyzed by fear, they gradually took on new roles under the guidance of the humans. Soldiers who had frozen in terror learned to act with purpose. Civilians found courage they did not know they possessed, and leaders began to see the value of decisive, rapid action over hesitation and cautious planning. The humans' presence was transformative. They did not simply defend, they inspired. Each successful operation, each carefully executed maneuver, demonstrated the power of adaptability, courage, and intelligence in the face of overwhelming odds. The aliens could see a new path forward, one where fear did not dictate decisions, where hope could coexist with vigilance, and where survival could be achieved through action rather than despair. As the days passed, the human forces moved deeper into territory that had been heavily controlled by the Marauders. Entire settlements that had been taken over were liberated. Civilians who had been hiding in fear emerged to see the humans leading the way, clearing obstacles and neutralizing threats with uncanny efficiency. The aliens could hardly believe what they were witnessing. Structures that had been destroyed or heavily damaged were carefully preserved whenever possible, as the humans prioritized the protection of life and infrastructure. This careful balance between lethal effectiveness and thoughtful preservation was unlike anything the alien civilization had experienced before. It was a level of skill, intelligence, and respect that elevated the humans far beyond the conventional idea of a savior. One of the most critical operations occurred at the Marauders' central command center. It was heavily fortified, protected by layers of defenses, and guarded by some of the largest, most dangerous creatures the humans had faced. To reach it, the Deathworlders had to navigate a labyrinth of traps, ambushes, and environmental hazards. Using their knowledge of physics, biology, and tactical warfare, they moved like shadows, avoiding unnecessary detection while systematically neutralizing each obstacle. The aliens who followed them could hardly keep up. Many had never seen a being move with such fluidity, precision, and awareness of every detail in the environment. When they finally breached the command center, the humans acted with a combination of speed, strategy, and intelligence that left the Marauders completely unprepared. Within hours, the Marauder leadership had been captured or neutralized, their control over the forces entirely broken. After the command center fell, resistance collapsed rapidly. Marauder units scattered, attempting to flee or regroup, but the humans anticipated every move. They used the terrain, their knowledge of Marauder behavior, and carefully laid traps to intercept escape attempts. It was not chaos, it was strategy perfected under extreme conditions. Slowly, the planet began to quiet, fires diminished, Marauder ships were destroyed or disabled, and the streets once filled with terror and destruction began to be cleared. Civilians cautiously emerged, witnessing the aftermath of the humans' relentless operations. Relief and gratitude mingled with awe. The aliens had prayed for heroes, expecting cautious and noble champions, and what they received instead were beings shaped by extreme adversity, capable of turning danger into opportunity and despair into action. The humans' impact extended beyond immediate survival. They also provided guidance to the aliens on preventing future threats. Defensive systems were upgraded, new strategies were implemented, and knowledge about the Marauders' behavior and tactics was shared in a way that the aliens could understand and use. The Deathworlders had not simply removed the immediate threat, they had strengthened the civilization, ensuring that it would be able to withstand future challenges. This mentorship, while subtle, was transformative. The aliens learned to combine their technological advantages with human adaptability and tactical insight, creating a hybrid approach to defense that made them far stronger than they had ever been. The resolution was also psychological. Fear that had gripped the planet for generations began to dissipate. Communities slowly came together, rebuilding not just physical structures but confidence, resilience, and hope. Parents could hold their children without the constant shadow of panic. Soldiers could patrol streets without trembling. Leaders could make decisions without feeling that the weight of inevitable defeat was upon them. The humans had not just fought the battle, they had reshaped the hearts and minds of the alien population. They had shown that courage, intelligence, and adaptability could overcome even the most terrifying threats. For the aliens, this was perhaps the greatest victory of all, the realization that survival and strength did not rely solely on technology, numbers, or age-old wisdom, but on the willingness to act decisively and fearlessly when it mattered most. The Marauders had been defeated, the planet stabilized, and the aliens were safe. The humans, though battered from battle and exhausted by constant action, remained disciplined and vigilant. They had not sought glory or recognition, they had focused on the task at hand, ensuring that the planet and its people would endure. Their presence, their actions, and their success had left an indelible mark on the alien civilization. These beings, once considered small and inconsequential by many in the galaxy, that had proven themselves as heroes beyond imagination, capable of confronting impossible odds and reshaping the outcome of events through skill, courage, and unyielding determination. The planet's inhabitants began to rebuild. Inspired by the humans' example, cities were repaired, defenses were improved, and a new understanding of heroism took root. The Deathworlders, having completed their mission, began preparations to leave, knowing that their role had been fulfilled. The aliens, while grateful beyond words, still struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what had occurred. Their prayers had been answered, but not with gentle, cautious heroes. They had received humans, survivors of a harsh world, warriors who faced death without fear, and saviors who had turned the impossible into reality. The resolution was not just in the end of conflict, it was in the transformation of an entire civilization, the awakening of courage, and the demonstration that even in the darkest moments, hope could be realized through decisive action and extraordinary skill. As the humans departed, the aliens watched with a mixture of awe, respect, and lingering disbelief. The planet had been saved, the Marauders defeated, yet more than that, the aliens had witnessed the arrival of a new kind of hero, one that challenged their expectations and reshaped their understanding of power, courage, and survival. The humans had shown that sometimes the most effective heroes were not those who preached caution or diplomacy, but those who acted decisively, adapted instantly, and confronted danger without hesitation. Their actions ensured not just survival, but a foundation upon which the alien civilization could grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. That humans had achieved what many civilizations thought impossible. The Marauders were gone, the aliens were safe, and the seeds of hope, courage, and resilience had been firmly planted. What had begun as a desperate plea for help had ended in triumph, not through magic or luck, but through the extraordinary capabilities, ingenuity, and unwavering determination of Earth's Deathworld. The planet would remember this day forever, not just as a moment of survival, but as the day when true heroes arrived and the impossible was made possible. When the battle finally ended, silence settled over the planet like a heavy, calming blanket. For weeks, the skies had roared with explosions. The ground had shaken under the steps of marauder beasts, and the cries of both civilians and soldiers had echoed through the cities. But now, with the Marauders defeated, with their fleets shattered and their monstrous creatures neutralized, a strange and almost unreal calm enveloped the world. The inhabitants, still shaken and exhausted, began to step out from their hiding places, blinking in the sunlight, overwhelmed by the sheer relief that the nightmare was over. Some held each other tightly, tears streaming down their faces, as they slowly realized that they had survived. Others looked around at the damage, the ruins of buildings, and the scarred landscapes, and understood that the journey to rebuild would be long and difficult. Yet amidst the destruction, a new feeling was growing, a deep, unshakable hope. The humans, the Deathworlders, moved quietly through the cities, observing, assisting, and preparing to depart. Unlike most saviors and legends, they did not seek reward, recognition, or praise. Their goal had always been simple: protect the innocent, neutralize threats, and ensure survival. Their presence had been transformative, but they were not creatures of ceremony or celebration. They had acted with precision, courage, and efficiency. And now that their mission was complete, they began the careful process of leaving the planet in a state where its inhabitants could continue to recover on their own. To the alien citizens, this was remarkable, that humans had arrived during the most desperate moment in their history, had faced insurmountable odds, and had emerged victorious, yet they remained humble, almost detached. Their heroism was not performative, it was practical, relentless, and absolute. As the aliens began to rebuild, the first order of reflection emerged. They looked at their cities, their homes, their lives, and realized how close they had come to total annihilation. Entire neighborhoods had been destroyed, families had been torn apart, and the foundations of their civilization had been shaken. Yet in the midst of this devastation, the humans had shown them that survival was possible. They had demonstrated that fear could be met with courage, weakness could be countered with ingenuity, and despair could be transformed into hope. The aliens' understanding of heroism, leadership, and resilience had fundamentally shifted. They had prayed for heroes, and while they had expected beings of calm wisdom and careful strategy, what they had received was something far more profound. Humans shaped by adversity, warriors who turned danger into advantage and impossibility into achievement. The psychological impact of the humans' actions was profound. Alien soldiers who had once hesitated in fear now understood the value of decisive action. Civilians who had hidden in terror began to explore their own capacities for courage and resilience. Leaders, who had once relied heavily on cautious planning and risk avoidance, began to see that adaptability, creativity, and boldness were equally essential in the face of unpredictable threats. The Deathworlders had not merely defeated the marauders, they had awakened potential within the alien population that had been dormant for generations. The planet was no longer just a place of vulnerability. It was a society that had glimpsed the power of fearlessness and innovation, guided by example. The seeds of transformation had been planted, and the alien civilization would never be the same. In the weeks following the battle, the practical work of reconstruction began. Humans assisted wherever their presence was needed, often subtly. They provided guidance on fortifying defenses, improving city layouts to minimize vulnerability, and implementing strategies for early detection of threats. They did not force their methods, but instead shared knowledge, demonstrating through action the principles that had allowed them to survive extreme conditions on Earth. The aliens absorbed these lessons with awe and gratitude. They had never seen a species capable of thriving in such hostile environments, of facing constant danger without fear, and of using intelligence and adaptability as their most powerful weapons. Each day brought new understanding of what had been achieved, not only on the battlefield but in the minds and hearts of those who had witnessed it. The aliens also began to grapple with the scale of what had been accomplished. They realized that the humans' methods were not limited to this single planet or this single battle. These beings had survived and thrived on a harsh, unpredictable world filled with dangers that would have crushed almost any other species. Their training, experience, and instincts were extraordinary, honed over generations in conditions designed to test every aspect of survival. And now, for the first time, the aliens had experienced the results of that training firsthand. The humans' presence had changed the course of history for their civilization. What had seemed like an impossible situation, a likely path toward destruction, had been turned into a story of survival and triumph. The aliens were left to reflect on the truth of the universe. Sometimes, help comes in forms that defy expectation, and the most powerful forces are often those least understood. The departure of the humans was quiet but memorable. They did not linger to receive thanks or accolades. They moved with purpose, always observing, always ready for the next challenge. To the aliens, it seemed almost surreal that beings capable of such extraordinary feats could also be so calm, so detached, so focused on the mission rather than recognition. And yet, this was part of what made the Deathworlders so remarkable. Their heroism was not performative, was absolute, practical, and effective. By the time their ships rose into the skies, the alien population understood that they had not only been saved but also forever changed. They had glimpsed a new kind of hero, one that combined courage, adaptability, intelligence, and unyielding determination. As time passed, the alien civilization began to rebuild with a renewed sense of purpose. Cities were reconstructed stronger than before, defenses were improved, and strategies for survival were integrated into everyday life. The memory of the humans' actions became central to their culture, a story told to children, studied by scholars, and honored in public memorials. Yet beyond the tangible changes, the deeper impact was psychological. The aliens had learned to value adaptability, courage, and intelligence as much as technology and tradition. They had seen firsthand that a species shaped by adversity could confront threats that others could not, and in doing so could redefine the rules of survival. Reflection also brought understanding of a larger truth. The aliens realized that the universe was far more unpredictable and dangerous than they had imagined. Marauders and other threats could appear without warning, overwhelming civilizations that relied solely on caution and careful planning. In this context, the humans represented not only hope but also a new paradigm for survival. They had demonstrated that the combination of resilience, intelligence, adaptability, and fearlessness could overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. The aliens internalized this lesson, understanding that future survival would require more than technology or alliances. It would require courage, creativity, and the ability to act decisively in the face of danger. The humans' influence extended beyond military strategy. Their very presence challenged the aliens' understanding of life, society, and potential. They had shown that a species could endure extreme hardship, adapt to nearly any environment, and maintain focus and efficiency under pressure. The aliens began to question their assumptions about strength, intelligence, and heroism. Could other species, underestimated and overlooked, possess such capabilities? Were there lessons to be learned from the Earth humans that could be applied across the galaxy? The implications were profound. The Deathworlders had not only saved the planet, they had sparked curiosity, reflection, and transformation that could shape interstellar civilization for generations. For the aliens, the aftermath was a mixture of gratitude, awe, and humility. They understood that their prayers had been answered in a way they could never have anticipated. They had imagined gentle, noble heroes, beings who would intervene with caution and care. What they received were humans fearless, adaptable, relentless, and capable of feats that defied conventional understanding. This realization shifted the alien perspective on the universe itself. They understood that survival required more than technology or alliances. It required courage, ingenuity, and the willingness to confront danger directly. The humans had modeled these traits perfectly, leaving behind a civilization transformed not only by their actions but also by their example as the alien population reflected on the events. Stories of the humans' heroism began to spread across the galaxy. News of Earth's Deathworlders reached distant civilizations, inspiring admiration, respect, and perhaps a measure of fear. These humans had not sought conquest or glory. They had acted with purpose and precision, confronting impossible odds and emerging victorious. Their deeds challenged existing assumptions about power, survival, and heroism. Across the stars, other species began to take notice, realizing that Earth was not a minor world, but the origin of beings capable of extraordinary resilience and adaptability. In the final analysis, the aftermath was not simply about rebuilding cities or fortifying defenses. It was about understanding the principles that had allowed the humans to succeed. The aliens studied their strategies, their adaptability, their focus, and their courage. They reflected on the importance of decisiveness, the value of learning from adversity, and the power of coordinated action. The humans' influence was profound, shaping not only military doctrine but also cultural understanding. Heroism was no longer measured solely by diplomacy, wisdom, or noble ideals. It was measured by the ability to confront danger, adapt, and persevere against overwhelming odds. The planet had survived, the marauders had been defeated, and the alien civilization had been transformed. The Deathworlders had completed their mission and departed, leaving behind a legacy that would endure for generations. The aliens understood that the universe was unpredictable, that danger could arrive without warning, and that survival required courage, intelligence, and adaptability. They had learned that true heroes are not always those who follow tradition or expectation, but those who act decisively, creatively, and fearlessly in the moment of greatest need. The reflection on these events would continue for generations. The aliens would tell stories of the humans, recounting the battles, the strategies, and the courage that had saved them. They would honor the lessons learned, integrating the humans' methods and philosophies into every aspect of their society. And even as the immediate threat faded into history, the memory of Earth's Deathworlders would remain a permanent part of their consciousness, a reminder that in a vast, dangerous galaxy, hope and survival often come from the most unexpected sources. The planet, once vulnerable and fearful, had been transformed. Its civilization was stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Its people had learned to trust in courage and adaptability, and in the process had discovered that even the darkest threats could be overcome. The humans had not only saved lives, they had inspired a civilization, leaving behind a legacy of bravery, intelligence, and unyielding determination. Their actions had redefined what it meant to be a hero, showing that true heroism is measured, not by words or reputation, but by the ability to confront danger, protect the innocent, and emerge victorious against impossible odds. In the end, the aftermath was both tangible and intangible. Cities would be rebuilt, defenses improved, and societies strengthened. But the deeper impact was the transformation of the alien mindset, the understanding that survival and heroism were not passive qualities but active choices. The humans had modeled these choices perfectly, and in doing so, had left an indelible mark on the planet, its people, and the galaxy itself. They had arrived as strangers from a distant world and departed as legends, shaping the course of history and inspiring generations to come.